Lakeside Little Theatre is pleased to present a conversation with Barbara Clippinger. Barbara started dancing at the ripe old age of 3. That began a career that took her all the way from the lights of Broadway to the glitter of Las Vegas as a dancer and a choreographer. She later went on to be an administrator in social services before making the move to Lakeside, where she's been a vital talent by directing and producing dozens of musical shows for the Little Theatre. Barbara, welcome to the Lakeside Little Theatre Stories Project. You have had and are still having such a varied and uplifting career, it's hard to know where to start. So let's start with Broadway, always a great place to start. You were a member of the June Taylor Dancers on Broadway and were part of the Jackie Gleason show. Now, you've told me what a kind and thoughtful man Gleason was, but I think the best insight on how thoughtful you found Gleason to be involves a gorilla. You tell us a little bit about the gorilla?
We were doing a circus number, which required different characters that they brought in other than the dancers. We were going through the show, and this one man made his life as a gorilla. He had a gorilla outfit, and that was what he whenever they needed a gorilla for anything, they called him in. So he came in, and we were rehearsing, and he was in a light blue suit. And I happened to be not in that part of the show, and so I was sitting next to Jackie Gleason, and I heard him turn to the producer and say, "Hey, don't make him get on the floor. That may be his only suit." And I just thought, oh God, that was, how thoughtful, you know. He was tough when he had to be tough, but he was a kind man.
Now, you also work with Sammy Davis Jr., another very kind man, who once asked you if you were mad at him because you couldn't get into his dressing room around all the celebrities to check in before the show. But one experience you had with him was when you were part of Broadway's answer to Selma during the Civil Rights era. You were the only white female dancer in a Harlem performance. What did Sammy tell the dancers, and what did you do?
Well, I was the only white female dancer in the whole show of Golden Boy. And that was a challenge sometimes. But during the Civil Rights movement, there was a number in the show called I Ain't Bowing Down No More. And in the show, it took place in Harlem. But Sammy called us all on stage and said, this is a movement that both black and white people are involved in, trying to get equal rights for everyone. And I've been getting rumors that some of the male dancers don't want the white girl in the show to be in this dance number. And he spoke very eloquently that day. Sometimes he talked street talk, and sometimes he had an English accent. He stood up and he just said, if you don't understand that it's black and white people together, working together, then I want you out of my show. I won't dislike you, I won't not be friends, but I don't want you in my show. So get up and leave now. And nobody left. And I did the dance number.
Now, when your career in Broadway ended, you began a career in public service and social work, and that started with going to college on a bet. Who did you bet with, and who won the bet?
Well, it wasn't actually a bet. It was my second husband was an alcoholic, and I kept saying, if you don't stop drinking, I'm going to start going back to school. And he didn't, so I did.
You worked in a center for battered women, and you had never been abused or battered, so you weren't even sure what that meant at first, but you learned. But then a twist of fate sent you to work for a homeless shelter. How did that happen?
When I was at the battered women's shelter, I was the program director, and I was responsible for doing some of the grant writing and doing the county reporting. And I was afraid of the woman who came to the shelter to check that we were following all the rules and everything was as it was supposed to be. But she came one time and she said, I'd like to have lunch with you. So I went to lunch with her and she said, I'm on the board of a homeless shelter in Laguna Beach, California, and I'd love for you to come and work for us there and do what you do here. And that was wonderful because I lived in Laguna Beach and I didn't have to drive 45 miles inland to go to work every day.
In 1996, you left your social work behind and you moved here to Ajijic. And it took only one night before the Lakeside Little Theatre entered your life. Right? I think it had something to do with a note in Molly Brown. Tell us about that.
I had flown all over Mexico, so I'd been everywhere but Chapala. And I never wanted to come to Chapala because it said it was filled with old people. And I wasn't old at the time. So I came down here by myself, and I stayed at a B&B, and I was a little bit late arriving. So the woman who owned the B&B stayed up and waited for me. And we stayed up and talked for a couple of hours, and I guess I told her all about myself, and we had a couple glasses of wine. And I woke up the next morning, and there was a note on my door of the B&B saying, "If you come back and if you stay, would you choreograph Molly Brown?" And I thought, wow. I came back and we did Unsinkable Molly Brown, which was the first large musical ever done at LLT, which was kind of fun. I think we had a cast of, 40 people or so.
You've also gotten involved in fundraising, and of course that means taking care of donors. And I recall you telling me about very good care you took of one donor, or rather you made it possible for someone else to take very good care of her. And the result was a $10,000 donation for a rehearsal hall and a very well-painted office. Now, the people in the story are no longer with us, but if you want to tell it without naming them, that's okay. But just give us a little peek behind the scenes of getting offices painted and money raised and keeping a particular man very busy and a particular woman very happy.
Well, I'd be happy to tell their names because they're both gone. Don Chalner was president of the theater at the time, and we wanted to build a rehearsal studio. And we decided, the board decided, whoever donated the most money would have the rehearsal studio named after them. So my friend Winnie Waddell was about to divorce her husband, who was quite wealthy, Wally Waddell, and she had found another man here in town, and she said, "Barbara, I will get Wally to donate $10,000 US if you can keep Wally busy Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings so I can have some time with my new friend." So I brought him back to the crew, and he was helpless, hopeless. He couldn't put a nail in he was just impossible. So I thought, what am I going to do with Wally? So I said, you know what, I need the president's office painted. So I gave him some paint, and he did it in a morning. I said, I'd go in every morning and go, "Oh no, Wally, that's not the right color. It's too pink, I needed more red. I'll get you." And so for like a month, I think he must have painted the president's office about 10 times at least. And my friend Winnie had a wonderful afternoon and morning, and the theater got $10,000, and the rehearsal studio was named the Winnie and Wally Waddell Rehearsal Studio.
Now, one of the things we both agreed on was the spirit of Puedo Ayudarte in Mexico, people helping each other. And that spirit visited you on the highway to Los Mochis.
Oh my God.
When you got a flat tire and the spirit arrived in a white Cadillac truck. You want to tell us about what happened?
When people say, how can you live in Mexico, or isn't it dangerous or whatever, I always love to tell this story. My neighbor and I were driving to the States. I was going to join the Palm Springs Follies, and she said, I won't let you drive alone. So we got in my car, packed everything I have, and in the trunk, and off we went. And somewhere between Mazatlan and Las Mochis, maybe, there's nothing there, it's a desert, I got a flat tire. She said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I said, in a couple minutes, a Mexican will stop and help us. And within 2 minutes, the white Cadillac truck pulled over, got out of the car, and out walks George Clooney, at least a man who looked like George Clooney. He spoke perfect English, and he said, may I help you, ladies? He proceeded to take everything out of the trunk of the car to get the flat tire. In another 2 minutes, a little VW bug came along, and a man had the right jack. And before you know it, there were 3 or 4 policemen, the VW bug guy, and George Clooney. And We got the flat tire on, we got my stuff all back in the back of the trunk, and George Clooney said, let me take you to the next toll to make sure you get there. And at the toll booth, there was a tire guy right at the toll booth, and the tire man stood up, and George Clooney said to him, do you have this tire? And he said, no, but I'll go get it. So in 20 minutes, the tire came back, 100 pesos later, and George Clooney says, I'm sorry, but I just can't keep going with you any longer. But here's my phone number, here's my cell number. If you need anything, please call me. The next day we headed towards the US, crossed the border, stopped in Texas somewhere, and I said, let's call George Clooney and tell him we made it. We thanked him again, and he was happy to hear from us that we were okay. So, well, since you're coming back, why don't you stop in Chihuahua, and I'd like to have you for dinner. I went to his home, and a lovely home, and his wife was a lovely lady, and he'd been marinating a chicken for, like, she said, a week to make this special chicken dinner, and he had all these gourmet wines. I mean, the man was such a class act. So that's what Mexico is for me, someone that gracious.
Well, we are out of time, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Lakeside Little Theatre, the institution that's brought us all together. As I said when we began, you have produced or directed or choreographed 24 shows here, a remarkable record. What is it about the Lakeside Little Theatre that keeps bringing you back?
It was a way of contributing to the community, making people happy, making people have a wonderful night out. It becomes family. When you work here, everyone that is in the shows, we all become like family, and it's a way to have a wonderful social life and to give and to participate and to be involved. And I guess I'll come back as the audience for sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and thank you for all the music and dancing and fun that you have brought to the people of Lakeside over the years, and that I know you're going to continue to bring.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you, Patrick.